A photo has sparked intense debate within the military community. China has reportedly developed its version of the V-280, a tiltrotor aircraft chosen by the US military, and claimed a successful first flight. However, doubts about the validity of this claim remain. The photo shows the aircraft painted in plain white with no identification numbers. It was reportedly flown near buildings, hovering just a few meters off the ground. The flight details, such as the flight objectives and the test location, were not disclosed, and the video footage is limited to just a few seconds. This doesn't appear to be a comprehensive test flight, but rather a staged photo opportunity designed to show the world, we have one too. The real challenge with tiltrotor aircraft goes beyond just building the structure. There are three major technical hurdles to overcome. First, there's the flight control transition. This 15-second window when the aircraft shifts from helicopter mode to airplane mode, which is highly prone to instability. Second, the redundant transmission system. If one engine fails, the other must immediately take over and keep both rotors spinning. Finally, there's the issue of material fatigue, as the aircraft must endure the long-term vibrations generated by high-speed rotors during extended use. Appearance alone does not guarantee combat readiness. Taking a photo doesn't mean the aircraft is ready for the battlefield. Today, we'll take a closer look at whether this knockoff V-280 is truly reliable. Chapter 1. Tiltrotor Aircraft, a tempting vision but full of challenges. The timeline of the project begins in 2021, when Shenzhen United Aircraft Company started the development. In February 2024, a model called the Lanying R6000 was showcased at the Singapore Air Show. By October 11, 2024, the first 6-ton tiltrotor UAV was unveiled in Wuhu, Anhui. In November 2024, the aircraft was officially released at the Zhuhai Air Show, where an order worth $1 billion was signed. More recently, a photo surfaced claiming the first flight of a manned version of the aircraft. Why are both China and the US so focused on tiltrotor aircraft? The answer is simple. It's the ultimate gamble in military aviation, combining the best features of helicopters and fixed-wing airplanes. Helicopters can take off and land vertically, but are slower and have shorter range. Fixed-wing planes are fast and cover long distances, but can't take off vertically. Tiltrotor aircraft aim to combine the capabilities of both. For China, the idea is particularly attractive. The Taiwan Strait lacks usable runways, requiring vertical takeoff capabilities. The South China Sea Islands are far apart, have harsh environments, needing quick resupply and troop deployment. Having aircraft that can take off without a runway is seen as a crucial asset for future military operations in these areas. But there's a catch. Achieving this balance requires overcoming three significant technological challenges. The aircraft must seamlessly transition from helicopter mode to fixed-wing flight. In that brief moment, the rotor blade's angle needs to change rapidly, and the aircraft's balance and lift must be precisely controlled to prevent a crash. It's like switching from riding a bicycle to driving a car mid-ride. The system completely changes, and a mistake can lead to disaster. This 15-second transition is considered one of the most dangerous parts of the flight, with the highest accident rates. For instance, the V-22 Osprey, which took decades to perfect, still faced numerous accidents during its early years, largely due to this unstable transition. If one engine fails, the other must immediately take on the full load. The tiltrotor's two rotors are linked by a massive drive shaft, meaning that during the transition, the torque increases dramatically, putting immense strain on the system. If the transmission fails, the aircraft could crash within seconds. It's similar to two people lifting a piano. If one suddenly lets go, the other must immediately bear the full weight, without allowing any tilt or wobble. The US spent over 30 years developing heat treatments, shock absorbers, and redundant drives to solve this issue, but even today, it's still an ongoing challenge. Finally, there's the issue of vibrations and noise caused by the large rotating blades. The structure must endure thousands of hours of stress and wear without failure. Reports indicate that for every hour of flight, the V-20 requires 8 to 15 hours of maintenance, which has been described as a maintenance nightmare. With no full video of the transition flight, can China truly claim to rival the US military in this area? Chapter 2. Similar in appearance, but not ready for combat. What does China's version of the V-280 get right, and where does it fall short? When looking at China's version of the V-280, it's important to focus on the facts. The external design closely resembles the original. From the photos, this unmarked white-painted aircraft shows a structure that mirrors the V-280. It features a fixed engine and tiltrotor configuration, which is identical to the V-280. The length of the body, rotor placement, side door design, and even the landing gear are almost identical to the US military version. The only noticeable difference is the tail, which has been changed from a V-shape to a T-shape, likely due to structural adjustments or an intentional effort to make it distinct. While this might look impressive to some, a closer examination raises questions about its capability and readiness. However, experts might ask, has the transition flight control been solved? Has redundant transmission been tested? What about the aircraft's life cycle evaluation? Let's break down the key shortcomings. First, the lack of test flight details. The photo that was released has been closely analyzed by military experts at the military news platform The War Zone. They pointed out several key issues. While another similar prototype appears next to the aircraft, no real test flight data has been provided. There's no footage showing takeoff, transition, or level flight as part of a complete test, nor any demonstration of mission equipment, cargo drops, or payload capacity. Additionally, there's no data on repeated flights or nighttime weather conditions. In short, this isn't a true test flight. It seems to be a staged photo opportunity, likely aimed at fulfilling internal reporting or policy requirements. 2. The lack of transparency about time and place. The location of the test flight is not disclosed, and the time remains unclear, and no weather conditions are provided. What does this imply? It suggests this isn't a display of engineering confidence, but rather a promotional effort designed to generate headlines. If the aircraft is genuinely ready, why not showcase a full demonstration flight? Why keep details such as the test pilots' names or the parameters of the flight so secret? Is the fear of failure behind the secrecy, or has it not yet reached the stage of actual flight? 3. Lack of carrier-specific features. If this aircraft is designed for use on an aircraft carrier, it raises several questions about its capabilities. For example, can the rotors and wings fold? Has it been tested for high salt exposure, high temperatures, or humidity? Has it undergone simulations or takeoff and landing on an aircraft carrier deck under windy conditions? Does it have heat shielding or jet blast resistance features? None of these essential features are visible in the current footage. This is not a display of technical maturity. It's more of a promotional showcase. The US V-280 prototype, even in its early stages, began extensive tests on flight control transitions, redundancy switching, and carrier compatibility back in 2017. In contrast, China has only released a photo of the aircraft hovering near a building, with no significant wind or flight conditions shown. It's obvious that the engineering is still in progress, while the promotional materials have already been released. True combat readiness is not demonstrated through a first flight photo. It's proven through a complete series of tests, including takeoff, transition, deployment, and return. Chapter 3. Better than the Osprey? 3 key questions and answers. Recently, headlines have been claiming that China's version of the V-280 has surpassed the US military's V-22 Osprey. Such attention-grabbing headlines have been circulating frequently. Today, we'll break down these claims with 3 key questions and refute them, exposing the 3 main technical illusions behind them. The first question is the size comparable? The answer is no. China's version of the V-280 weighs between 8 and 10 tons, while the US V-22 weighs 23 tons. The V-22 is designed to carry armored vehicles, provide aerial refueling, and support long-range deployments. China's version, on the other hand, resembles a larger civilian aircraft, not a military transport. Comparing the two is like putting a minivan next to an oil tanker. They may look similar, but one is clearly not built to handle the same tasks. The V-22 is designed for amphibious assaults and special operations, while China's aircraft is not yet ready for those roles. The second question is the design more advanced? Again, the answer is no. China's version adopts the V-280's design, which avoids the more complex structure of the V-22. While this might seem like a smart choice, it comes with its own problems. The fixed engine means the rotors must tilt more precisely. If the transition between helicopter and airplane mode fails, it leads to severe instability. If one engine fails, the other must take over, putting extreme stress on the system. The V-280 has struggled with these exact issues for years, so without test data or transition performance, how can China claim to have surpassed this technology? The third question is it ready for aircraft carrier use? Once again, the answer is no. If this aircraft is intended for use on an aircraft carrier, several essential features are missing. Can the rotor blades fold? Has it been tested for salt exposure or corrosion resistance? Can it operate in harsh weather or under jet blast? The aircraft has not been tested for these critical conditions. The Chinese version has not even passed the carrier suitability tests that the V-22 underwent years ago. In short, while China claims it has surpassed the Osprey, it's clear that the aircraft has not met the necessary requirements for real combat situations. The critical tests remain unaddressed, and the first flight photo shown to the public is far from proving readiness for battle. Claims that China has surpassed the Osprey are premature. The aircraft still needs to meet essential battlefield requirements. There are 5 key areas that determine readiness: flight control transitions, transmission redundancy, fatigue life, carrier capability, and maintenance hours. If any of these areas fail, the aircraft won't perform on the battlefield. Right now, the first flight shown by China doesn't address any of these critical factors. While the media may be calling it a success, engineers know the aircraft is far from ready. Chapter 4: How China Copies and Handles the Tiltrotor Aircraft. Has China successfully developed its tiltrotor aircraft? In short, about 70% of it is visible, while the remaining 30% is still in a precarious position. So, how did China approach this development? As has often been the case with China's military equipment, the strategy is simple: copy the design, then copy the technology. This approach remains consistent here. From the model displayed at the 2024 Zhuhai Air Show to the unveiling of the R6000 unmanned version in Wuhu, Anhui, and the recent first flight photo of the manned version, the design has been finalized. The external dimensions, aerodynamic layout, and other key design elements closely follow the US model, with the only noticeable difference being a change from the V-shaped tail to a T-shaped tail, likely due to structural constraints or an attempt to differentiate the design. The significance of this step lies in the finalized aerodynamic model, which sets the stage for testing. Once the design is settled, the next steps, such as wind tunnel testing, structural design, and more, can begin. While this seems straightforward, it is essentially about building a framework and gradually filling in the details. The next challenge is mastering flight control transitions, with simulation as the main method and actual flight tests as a secondary step. It's not something that can be done right away with a real aircraft, as that would be risky. China's approach includes a 4-step process: computer simulation, with wind tunnel testing, ground testing, and small-scale flight tests. First, virtual models are created and tested repeatedly for tilt actions, wind disturbances, and sensor coordination. Then, scale models are tested in wind tunnels to adjust airflow and measure lift. After that, full-scale static platforms are used to test all flight control, transmission, and operational systems. Finally, initial flight tests focus on hovering, small-angle tilting, and only when ready, full transitions. This is not a film set. It's about managing the critical 15-second window during the transition. The tilt and rotor movements must be precise. If something goes wrong, it's not a simple adjustment, it's a crash. Based on current information, China may have completed the hovering, slow-speed forward flight, and small-angle tilt tests, but have they achieved a full transition? Do they have stable data? Have they tested it in various weather conditions? The answer is unclear, and no one is ready to claim that these issues have been fully addressed. Next is the transmission system challenge. The true difficulty in tiltrotor aircraft is the cross-wing transmission shaft, the critical component for linking the engines. If one engine fails, the other must immediately take over to maintain control. Without this, the aircraft would fall from the sky. This presents several high-risk challenges. First, controlling torsional vibrations is difficult because the engine doesn't rotate at a constant speed, causing the transmission shaft to produce high-frequency vibrations. Second, there's heat management. When one engine takes the full load, the transmission chain can overheat quickly, and if cooling or lubrication fails, it can burn out the gears. Finally, there's material fatigue. China claims to use high-strength gear steel with surface heat treatment, but it's unclear whether it can endure 300 hours of emergency load testing. China may claim that it has redundant systems, but it cannot ignore the following questions. After the left engine shuts down, how quickly does the right engine take over? What is the system's critical temperature for failure in high temperature and high humidity environments? After 5 high-intensity operations, how long does it take for maintenance? Can the vibration frequency of the propeller cause tail-rotor synchronization issues? None of these details have been made public. The aircraft may look like it was designed for civilian use, but its true purpose seems to be military. While China claims it's focused on low-altitude economy, logistics, and emergency rescue, it's clear that the tiltrotor is designed for military applications. The civilian front is just a cover. This is not a new tactic for the Chinese Communist Party. In the past, drones were marketed as tools for express delivery, only to end up being used in the South China Sea. Civilian-grade engines were developed, but they ended up being used in the J-20 fighter jet. Now with the tiltrotor, the civilian version is just a front, while the real focus is on military use. But China hasn't even met basic civilian safety standards. The question is whether this aircraft has civilian aviation certification. Are there any reports of accidents or incidents? Has it been tested for emergency failures? Who would even trust it to make a full transition flight? These are crucial questions that remain unanswered. The first flight may be a political statement, but when it comes to technical readiness, the real test is much harder. China may have mastered about 70% of the visible technology, from flight control simulations to transmission testing, but the remaining 30% is critical for battlefield readiness. Can the flight control transitions be stabilized? How quickly can the system handle an engine failure? Can the gears withstand the stress? Has a full assessment been done for carrier compatibility? These questions can't be answered with a photo. When China, like the US military, is ready to publish test data, failure reports, and transparent assessments, then we can consider their technology mature. Until then, claims of surpassing the Osprey are premature. The reality of China's tiltrotor aircraft is clear. The external appearance has been presented, and photos have been taken. But the real tests, the flight control transitions, transmission redundancy, fatigue life, carrier compatibility, and maintenance hours have not been addressed. This aircraft is not China's future weapon, but rather a propaganda model designed for the system. Looking ahead, there are 3 key points to watch. First, will China release a full video of the transition flight? Not just hovering near a building, but the full transition from vertical takeoff to level flight. Second, will it pass the carrier capability tests? Rotor folding, deck conditions, and corrosion resistance are critical to its ability to operate from an aircraft carrier. Third, what are the maintenance and operational availability? Is it going to require days of repair after each flight, or can it be used for high-intensity operations like the US military's aircraft? Don't be fooled by a single photo. The real answers will come from these 3 key areas.